Welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. Today we are on episode 30. We are talking about leading with clarity, the power of informed decisions in a misinformed world. This episode connects a little bit to the previous one when I had Damon Albert on from Camp Esri, and we were discussing kind of some local events that had been happening and how the full truth was not revealed in the news and how that can impact people's understanding of actually what's going on in our community and up and down this 81 corridor. So when I spoke with our guest today and we were deciding what direction to take the episode in, that is something that we kind of noticed even in his industry, that people aren't necessarily making informed decisions. They're not being informed about how different things that are happening could impact big decisions that they're making in their life. So today I have invited on Kyle Homan, and I originally met Kyle through the Top of Virginia Regional Chamber. I've been blessed to work alongside him as a co-chair for the ambassador program there. We get to go out in the community and visit some businesses. We have a lot of fun together. So now I'm excited to share Kyle, as he can provide a lot of wonderful value to folks. And so I wanted to introduce you. Thank you for being here today, Kyle.
Thank you for having me, Sierra. I'm
very excited to have a mountaineer in the room.
Exactly.
It's important to know.
West Virginians always stick together.
Oh, we do. We do. So we definitely connected on that too. So if you don't mind, can you bring our listeners up to speed? Give us a little background on who you are. You know, that bio you sent me. I'm going to let you handle that.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to where you are today.
Well, I am a mortgage originator, residential mortgage lender. I am in my 26th year. I've been at 3 different companies. I spent 22 years and a couple of months with a company that has a red stagecoach. And then I was about 2 years and change with another company, a national company, and now I'm with a local company, a local bank. So prior to that, I spent about 16 years in the food service industry, 3 years locally in restaurant management with Wendy's International, and then 13 years with the home-based company, Hester Industries. So I still enjoy the food business, still like to cook, one of my hobbies, and lived here in the Winchester-Frederick County area since about the early 80s. So I'm not a native, but it seems like I've seen Winchester as a child. We came here all the time to shop. We weren't far away. And I still remember a lot of the landmarks. So that's me.
So you came here to shop.
Right.
I can relate to that, right? Because it was the closest city. It was big city in our world. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Moorfield, West Virginia, the poultry capital, West Virginia, is where I grew up. And you're right, because geographically, Moorfield, you could either go to Cumberland, Maryland, if you needed industry. Actually, that's where I was born. I spent the first 3 days of my life as a Marylander, but the rest of it was in West Virginia. And then it just seemed like doctors, went to Dr. Burns for my eyes when I was in the 4th grade because I have terrible eyesight. My brothers and I all have flat feet, so we came over here to get shoes at Huntsberry Shoes at that time. And I remember the mall when it was Loudon Street, when it was two-way traffic and all the spots on that. So yes, if we needed something, we came here. And I burned up the roadway between here and there, especially with my eyesight. I got contact lenses, so I was at Bronstadter's. I would walk from there down to Dr. Burns' office, back and forth. So Boscawen Street I knew fairly well.
Yeah, you do. You do know Winchester very well. When we go out to do our ambassador visits, I'll say the address that we're going to, and you'll always seem to know exactly, based on the number, what block it's on and where it might be. And I'm always impressed by that. So yeah, I will say that, unless you went to Hanley, you're not technically from Winchester kind of thing, but I think you have earned the right to say that you're also from Winchester.
From Winchester. Kids went to Hanley. My wife went to James Wood. So there is a little bit of a battle.
There you go. There you go. So thank you again for coming on today. I wanted to use this as an opportunity for you to provide a little bit of education around how things have changed in your industry over the years. I said I wouldn't mention it, but you were doing a period of social media education where you were adding value in that way. Can you talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen and share some of that education?
Sure. Well, it's now almost 2025. So I started in the mortgage industry in 1999, towards the latter part of it. And I can remember then that the biggest piece of technology was the fax machine, because everything then, a lot of the contracts that lenders got from realtors were the old 3-copy carbon, and the lender typically got the bottom copy, which if you remember writing anything on 3-copy carbon, if you didn't press down hard enough, whoever got the bottom copy couldn't read what the top copy said. So going to the fax machine was a big technology change. Also back then, most people did not have cell phones, or if they did, the cell phone technology was very limited. A lot of people carried pagers. That was where we were at that point. Now everything is pretty much electronic. To the signatures are done electronically. Prior to that, everything was wet signed, meaning that actual signatures were on contracts, actual signatures were on documents that were recorded as part of a transaction. Now a lot of it can be done electronically, so that kind of gives you, just from the hard part of the nuts and bolts part, but the industry as a whole, the technology as to how we do our job, how we market, how we process, that has all changed. And probably something that even put a superhighway in there was COVID, because COVID, as we all know, sequestered a lot of people. We were quarantined, we couldn't go out, but yet we still had to do our jobs. I've worked in office environments all my life, and I'm probably one of the few that says I love working in an office environment, because I know a lot of people now that were forced to work at home love working at home. I can't do it. My kids graduated college before and during COVID and had to learn their jobs working remotely. So they don't know what it's like to some degree to work into an office. So that's changed. But the speed of the process itself is still taking about the same amount of time. It can be done quicker. And there's been some things that have happened that have changed that in the course of time. We can talk about that. But technology really has changed things from the marketing, from the processing to doing our jobs, but yet I don't know if it's the secret solution to making this industry what it should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we were talking earlier about how people are making decisions based on what they hear. Like yesterday, there was a rate change.
Right.
And on my way home yesterday, I had a conversation with my brother, and he shared with me that now's the perfect time to refinance because he heard about a rate change. And so you and I discussed that. Can you share a little bit about the information that people hear out and about and how they are using it to make decisions? But what are some of maybe the myths that you can bust in this episode for us?
Right. Well, let's talk about the rate change, because that's kind of hot topic right now. The Federal Reserve made a rate cut yesterday, which everybody anticipated they would do. So if you have a credit card, a home equity line of credit, a consumer loan that's variable rate or such, like a unsecured line of credit, you're probably going to see a little bit less interest paid on that note, because that's what that cut affects.
Right.
Your mortgage rates, your residential mortgage rates are really not directly impacted by that, but they are impacted by it in sort of a subtle way. I shouldn't say subtle way, but in an indirect way. If you think about it, the mortgages that we get for our homes, those rates change every day. We don't need the Federal Reserve to come out and announce a rate cut, and then all of a sudden we assume that we're going to experience that. Actually, here's the sad part of the story. The mortgage rate market yesterday after the Fed rate cut, it wasn't necessarily the rate cut that they reacted to. It was what was said afterwards by the chairman.
Okay.
And some of the fall through from that, the mortgage bond market went negative and interest rates jumped on mortgages. Now, the hardest part of my job, and anybody that originates mortgages, is when someone picks up the phone and, like your brother, and calls us and says, hey, I heard the rates got better. I want to refinance. And we have to say, no, that's not actually what's happened on the mortgage side. They've actually gone the other way. The problem is people will probably read in the media that rates dropped by 0.25%. So we're the devil here fighting against the media that's telling us we're wrong. But inside the industry, we see everything and know everything, but it's not something that the normal consumer is seeing because their source of information is not the same source of information we have, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense, and it shows the importance of, well, honestly, with our networking, surrounding yourself with people who are experts in their own industry and not just assuming that what you're hearing is accurate,
right?
And isn't impacting the decisions the way that you would expect they would. Are there any other myths in the industry that you would want to unpack? That consumers, come in and they're making decisions based off of, and then you have to turn around and share.
Well, probably, and there's no fault to this. I mean, we all have parents, and when you're dealing with young folks that they're starting out and they're getting the training wheels off the bike and they're going out on their own, they may look at purchasing a home, and obviously my kids have always turned to me for, well, Dad, what do you think about this? But a lot of times, when they ask that question, mom or dad are thinking back to 30 years ago or when they bought their house or 20 years ago, and they're thinking that things are still the same in the lending industry, and they're not. They are everything has totally changed. The meltdown, the financial market meltdown of 2008, result of that, there was just a lot of legislation that was passed. In 2000, subsequently after that, 2013, 2014, 15, all these changes to the lending industry totally changed the landscape of how we originated loans. So if mom and dad were getting a loan prior to that, the rules were a lot more relaxed and things were done a lot more looser. Now they've tightened up. So when a lender comes back and says, well, I'm going to disagree with mom or dad because this is how it is, then you're sort of fighting that little bit of resistance too. So that's kind of a common one, but just the fact that now with lending, well, I shouldn't say now, it's been that way. Things got really tight after 2008, and they've kind of loosened up somewhat because we learned, the mortgage industry learned a lot about the crisis of 2008. It happened because the housing industry was so oversaturated with inventory, and it just collapsed. Now we're on the other side of that because there's a shortage of inventory. So there's never going to, I don't never say never, but there won't be another situation like we're not going to see another 2008 now. But the lenders, those that used to do loans and the way we did loans back then, those programs are gone. So it's more back to where if you say you make something, then you have to prove it on paper. If you say you have this, you've got to still prove it on paper. So it is kind of a more cut and dried way to do business now.
Yeah. I was thinking about what are the things that my parents have said, and has their kind of thought process changed over the years? When I was a little bit younger and making decisions about where I was going to live, I remember my parents always saying, you don't want to rent for too long because that money could be going towards your ownership of a home, right? And that has always been my mindset of I want to own as much as possible because I don't want to be paying somebody else when that same money could be paying off a loan.
Right.
Is that still accurate today?
Oh, I think so. If you go back and anybody that's owned a home prior to probably 2020, here locally, if you're in Frederick County, you got your recent tax assessment. So I've heard people not happy with that, but hey, folks, your property's going up in value. That's a good thing. If you were investing that same money in the stock market, you'd certainly want to see a return that's just as profitable. So yes, it's anybody that's invested in real estate, it's a great investment. It is, a challenge with the shortage of inventory. If you look at what you could have bought a house for prior to 2020 versus now, it's a big difference. And then throw in with that back during the COVID years, interest rates got so very low that money was cheap. I don't think we'll ever see in my lifetime interest rates get down into that level, 3% or even below 3%. That was a freak. That was a unicorn that I don't know if we're going to see it again. And now we're kind of dealing with where the market rates are in the mid sixes, high sixes, which back in my years, that was a pretty good rate. If you go back and look at the baby boomer generation coming out of the Carter years into the early Reagan years, I can remember the prime rate was up over 20%. If you wanted to buy a house, you were probably looking at 16, 17% on a fixed rate of interest. Wow. And you say that to someone of that age range, a baby boomer, they're not distressed at all when you tell them today's rate 6 or 6.5%. But you talk to someone like my kids who grew up where 3% was the norm. Yeah. That's
my first
totally
house,
different. And they're going to live that way for the next 40, 50 years and still think that the rate should be 3%, where my generation thinks, 8 or 9% is probably norm.
That's interesting. See, this is why I keep you around. I'm always learning something new from you.
Well, learn it. It's just experience.
Yeah. Well, you have plenty of that.
I don't know about that.
No, we were just, we were just out doing our ambassador visits.
Right.
As we do, we try to do once a month together. We don't do it as often as we could.
Right.
But during that time, I was expressing to you that I'm trying to make decisions about, what makes the most sense for me, renting until I find the place I really love, and then investing in a home, what makes sense. And we were talking about the importance of being a good steward of our finances and making decisions that help us to save for these investments. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what you see when people come in and the decisions that they're going to have to make in order to be able to invest in something like a home?
Sure. Well, buying a house is I think, the American dream. They've always said home ownership is what we want, which is true.
Yeah.
When I bought my first house, when I worked at Hester Industries, I can remember Mr. Hester making a comment that he loved it when his employees owned their house, because that meant that they had to work harder because they now had a mortgage payment. So it's almost like it solidified that relationship. And I think that's true.
Yeah.
But the ability to buy a house, it does take some sacrifice, obviously. We were talking about, I get a lot of folks that make good income, strong, good, dependable income, because our area has a lot of good employment opportunities. That's one of the things we've been blessed about here.
Yeah.
Is even when the market downturn, when 2008 and all that hit, we didn't suffer that much. And I think part of it is we're near the nation's capital. The federal government, big employer, its tentacles reach out this way too.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, when they come in and we look at different loan programs, because with mortgage industry, there's a lot of different programs that have special qualifications. And one of the primary questions I will ask is, have you saved up money, or do you have a budget, or do you have money ready to go buy a home? Because you're going to need a down payment maybe. That can vary. But one of the consistent things you're going to have is closing cost. And it's a transaction. So if you're buying in Virginia, you have tax stamps to pay on your mortgage and your deed. You've got legal fees, lender fees, etc. So somebody's got to pay for those.
Right.
And a lot of times when people come in and they say, well, look, I don't have a lot of money, and I'm kind of analyzing their situation and see they make good income, probably one of the dirty little secrets now is bank statements. Everybody stop writing checks. They all use their debit card. So I'll review a bank statement, debit card, and see, $4, $5, $10, $12, and a lot of it's spent on things that they like to do, like go get a nice cup of coffee or eat dinner out or eat lunch out. And I'm like, well, if you would have cut some of that out, I could probably help you save if you just change a little bit of your personal lifestyle.
If you meal prep, like we were talking about.
If you meal prep. Well, it's like people that, here we are, December, mid-December, late December, everybody's going to, like myself, enjoy the holiday food, but come January 1st, what do we all do? We make New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to lose, X number of pounds. First thing they think is, I'm going to go join a gym. Well, if you join the gym, that's great, but magically paying that gym membership isn't going to make those goals come in. Yeah. You're going to now have to go through the door and work at it. And the same thing is true with, if you want to buy a house, you've got to work at it. So if you need to save money, can you sacrifice? Can you change your lifestyle?
Yeah.
Can you do without the $5 cup of coffee every day or whatever it is? Because you'd be surprised, and people have made millions off writing books like this, but it's really simple if you can just change a couple of things.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is, a lot of people don't take advantage of finding out what their credit rating is, because that's a very important part of buying anything, a car, getting a credit card. Your rate of interest that you're charged is going to be based a lot on your credit score. And you can find out that, and which I encourage people to do once a year. And if there's misinformation on there, go address it, fix it, because until you do, it's not going to help you improve your rating. Or if you look at your debts and say, wow, I've got a lot of bills here, I've got some things, do I really need these? Are these necessities? Can I cut them out? Because now you're making a plan to buy your home. And to me, if you want to invest money and become a millionaire, it's the same thing with making an investment for where you live. Your home is a durable asset that will provide benefit over time.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points. I mean, I talk all the time about, like, when you're trying to be more intentional with your plan for your life, you really want to get it down to, like, even with your time, how you're choosing to use your time, right? What am I giving up in order to do this one thing, right? And it's the same thing. People are walking in, they want a house, but they're not willing to give up their coffee, right? Or they're not willing to give up the big truck payment. And they're literally making a choice, which is more important, this or this. And I shared with you, this year was a huge year for me to pay off credit card debt. And I had to give up a lot in order to pay that off. Do I still have my coffee here and there? Yes. But I know when I go through that drive-through at Dunkin', right, that's $5 less that I'm able to put towards this other thing. And you have to start thinking about things like that, because you and I were talking about looking at people's statements, right, and being very surprised by where all the money goes.
Well, and the really neat thing about it, I don't know how you feel, but when you've sacrificed something and you've achieved your goal, you say, you know what, that really wasn't that hard to do.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Why didn't I do that 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever?
Yeah. So no, I think it's really helpful to have you share some of those things. I'm going to take you in a completely different direction now.
Oh no.
I know.
Mountaineer
it's a little
football,
bit
I
scary.
will not talk about that.
So I usually start every episode and he just swallowed hard. For those of you not watching the video, he swallowed like, where is she going right now? I'm going to regret this. I usually start every episode by asking the individual when they first saw themselves as a leader. Because this whole podcast is all about leadership and to give you background, because I know you haven't listened to other episodes, I'm going to call you out.
You're right. You got me.
The whole concept is realizing that you don't have to have a title to be a leader, to have an impact, right? And I didn't realize how long I had been leading. I had been a classroom teacher for 10 years, and I didn't realize I was a leader. I was, quote unquote, just a teacher, right? And so we often attribute leadership to having a specific title, and I don't want that to be the case. Sure. I want people to understand we can lead ourselves effectively, we can lead our families effectively, right? And so on. So you are a leader with a title, right? You are a vice president, okay? So you do hold a title, but prior to that, when did you first see yourself as a leader?
Yeah, Gosh, that is a tough question. I've never really thought of myself as a leader. I'll spin it this way.
Okay.
I love to read. Reading is one of my hobbies. I love military history. Love to read American history, and one of the goals was to read a biography or a book on all the U.S. presidents. I'm way behind on that, but there's some really in military leaders too, generals, American generals, things of that nature, and they all had kind of that drive to, but some of them wanted to be, and some of them were almost leaders, but they didn't know they were because people followed them. Maybe I'm more of that category, but I have a lot of bad habits, trust me. But I think I've always said you got to be honest with people, the golden rule. Stephen Covey, I've been through those. And if you do the right things, I think we're supposed to. And if that makes you a leader, then everybody's a leader.
That's what I think. That's the right answer.
Because those that don't, people don't want to be with them, or if they do, they're under false impression. I've always told my children that if you want respect, you have to earn it. One of the adages is if someone asks me to do something, I have to say, can I do it? And if I can, I will say, yes, I will. If I can't do it, I'm going to say, no, I can't do it. I'm not going to tell them I can do it and then don't do it because, oh, yeah, I'll be there to help you. And then when you want me there, I'm not there. If I can't do it, I'm not going to volunteer because I think then you lose trust in people. And that's hard to get back. And I think good leaders, great leaders have earned the trust and the respect. And that's why they are what they are.
So, no, it's great reflection, and I couldn't agree more with any of that. And that's why I do this, because so many people often feel that they're not leaders, but someone on the outside is looking at them and just blown away by what they're able to do and look up to them, right? And so you might not feel like a leader, but I look up to you. And that's why I surround myself with people I look up to and I want to learn from. So,
well, to be a leader, I don't know, sometimes there's jobs that have to be done and somebody won't volunteer to do it because there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there that will critique somebody for the job they do. Elected officials. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a politician because my skin's not that thick. But I know in serving on some of the things I've done in my past, I've respected what politicians do, whether you like them or not, because they're willing to step up there and do it. But the ones that armchair quarterback, you never see them running for office, but they are usually the first ones to critique. So I think leadership involves stepping in to do the hard stuff and the easy stuff. And if you have those traits, I think you'll do well.
No, I think that's awesome. So can you, and you don't have to say where you work or any of that, but can you share about what leadership looks like for you now with your title?
Well, it's leading a team, and it's kind of like being a coach. I don't know titles. I'm not a big title person. I joke that in the banking industry, everybo's a vice president.
Everybody's a VP.
If they got on the PA system and said, all the vice presidents, please report to the office, they would need an airplane hangar to put them in. But it's more to help. I enjoy helping people develop. I enjoy spending that experience and saying, if someone's new or they need help, I really enjoy helping people. And that's sharing the experiences, or, okay, let's look at it this way. Can we do it? And because the success of what I do is based on the success of my team. If the team falters, I'm not a good leader. If they do well, then that's great. I'm glad for them, and it worked. And I think coaching a team, working as a vice president or a sales manager, if the team's doing well, then you're doing something well.
Yeah, it's very true. And I'm not surprised that you connected it back to coaching, though.
That's what you do, right?
Yes, but I was thinking about you, Coach Kyle, with your whistle around your neck.
Yeah. Can't do that anymore.
But it was good while it lasted. And what
was.
I liked about that was you were literally branching out and trying something new. And I
Out
think,
of the box.
yeah, and it was working.
Well, you talked about technology because social media didn't exist when I first got into sales and marketing, wherever it was.
Back in the day.
It was shoe leather. It was shoe leather,
Yeah.
and one of the fun things about you mentioned us going out today. One of the things I really hated about COVID is people hibernated.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best things that happened is we all came out like the groundhog. That now we can come out and everything's good. And getting out to network and see people, I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Seeing people, friends, seeing people I've known for years. Our generation, that's how we interacted.
Yeah.
But the social media has kind of replaced some of that. The younger generation, I often wonder, civic clubs, because I'm involved in Kiwanis, civic clubs have been a real backbone of our communities. And I can remember, it seemed like when I grew up, most of the people that were my peers were men that had served the country, whether it was Vietnam, Korea, World War I or II. When they came home, they joined a civic club because they wanted to help make things better. They saw the worst of things. We don't have that now. Mm-hmm. We don't have the clubs. The civic clubs are losing membership because those people are dying off. Unfortunately, we don't have a stream coming in to replace them because the kids now interacting is all social media. It's not getting out to network events or go out on mixers and stuff like that, like the chamber offers. They're just not used to that. They've never done it.
Well, the other piece of that, the reason I love that you did it was the educational piece. And you stated you can't do that anymore. But how can you continue to educate? Because I think of you as someone who does that consistently. So what will it look like for you now to get out there and educate people?
We're trying to put some forums together where it's, we're a regulated industry, so we got to be careful at what we do, because my employer I may say something that, it could come back and reflect negatively on them, which I understand.
Yeah.
I had a little bit more freedom where I was before. Now, prior to that, I couldn't do it, so that was a short span career. But we can still do it in a way that's a little bit more local, not on social media, which social media goes worldwide.
Everywhere.
We're going to be doing it more on a local community basis until we get to the next steps.
Well, and people need to get out there and go to those events too.
Yes,
when you hold them, right?
Yes,
and
correct.
not get stuck behind the computer. Actually, in the previous episode, I had a nonprofit on, and it was Camp Azri, and we were talking about keyboard warriors, people getting behind the keyboard and sharing their thoughts and what all the problems are, but they're not actually coming forward with solutions and not participating in the solution. Right?
Yes, armchair quarterbacking.
Yeah, and same thing with you, right? If you want to be informed and make well-informed decisions, you have to get out from behind the computer and surround yourself with people and go learn from them.
Correct.
So I think that's important to state too. On the leadership side of things, same thing. Like, as you're leading your team, you want to be transparent about what's going on behind the scenes. That's how you build trust, right? Right. And so you want to keep your team informed and be providing truth to them as well. That's obviously very important. You had mentioned doing some reading in relation to leadership, and you even quoted something there. Outside of the historical stuff, do you do any reading specific to leadership, to your growth in impacting others?
Well, there's not probably as much as better leaders than I. It's funny because I listen. I'm starting to get in the podcast.
Okay.
I grew up in that generation where our household was Walter Cronkite every night.
Yeah.
We would sit down at the supper table, and my dad would eat supper and had Cronkite with the news. So I grew up getting information on, but that's all changed. Now you have social media, podcasts. But when I listen and I hear someone really talk about a good book, I always write that down. And if it's a book that really has interest to me, that's probably one of the fickle parts. If I start a book and I'm not buying into it right away, I'll usually stop or put it aside. But if it's a really good book on leadership or something of a person that was really successful, absolutely, I like to read and see how they operated, and taking those principles, those lessons back, absolutely. A good leader does that.
Yeah.
They're always. I look at even my peers; they're always constantly reading something that's going to make them better, or. I mean, you're always re-engineering the wheel in sales. So as the industry change, whether it's mortgages or whatever it is that change, you have to adapt to the change. If you're not adapting to the change, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, that's very true. I think another part of that effective leadership is helping them to see their value and potential. So you said you see your people reading, you see them all around you continuing to grow, right? But I think going back to, people being misinformed, I think people have been misinformed that they have the inability to have such a great impact on other people without the title. Like, I want people to feel like every single interaction they have is an opportunity to impact someone's life. And you don't have to have the title to do that. So I think that it's awesome that you're talking about seeing them grow, seeing them grow around you, but just lifting them up and supporting them and empowering them to take more on and show what they can do, I think is a piece of that.
Sometimes they don't have the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
And when you can say, look, it's really not that hard, let's walk through this together. Yeah. And then once they get that confidence, obviously now they feel good that they're going to do it.
Yeah.
There's so many things that change all the time, and you have to keep up with that change. And if you don't want to change, you're not going to succeed, and you have to change. And that's one of the things with our industry is we have to continually, there's so many forces that we don't control that we have to take what we have and see what we can make with it. And that's part of what a leader's going to do.
Yeah. Well, and the piece about confidence, I think that's also because, I'm sorry, that people are growing within a company based on their experience and technical skills, not necessarily on their ability to manage and lead others, but because they've had experience in the industry for so long and naturally they were the next person to move up.
True. Right?
And so they're in that role, and then they reach out and they say, I don't think I'm good at leading, and I don't know that I really want to lead, or I found myself here and people are looking to me for answers and I don't have answers, right? So of course you're not going to be confident. Right. Oh, by the way, you don't have to have all the answers in a leadership
that
position.
Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, there was times I doubted, I think you got the wrong person. I really don't, I look in the mirror, that's not me. Yeah. They can't be taking me serious, but it does, you have to recognize that if people are saying you can do it, then it's like, okay, maybe I can. You didn't learn to swim until you jumped into the water, and you may have swallowed a lot of it, but then you learned how to do it, and you survived. But do you have to really instill that confidence in people that they can do it? Maybe you have to show them. Some people will grab it quickly, and it may take a little bit more work to get others to do it. But if you can get all the pieces working together as a leader, that really makes you feel good that it is working.
No, I think that's, thanks for sharing that resonated with you, that you felt that way. And it was the same way. So when I made the switch to running my own business and leadership development as a whole, instead of just leadership and education, John Maxwell was my first real exposure to leadership, and he was talking about leadership just being influence, nothing more, nothing less, and you are influencing everybody around you all the time. So you might not feel like you're doing a good job of it, but how is it that you're using your influence? Are you using it in a positive way? Are you being intentional about using this opportunity to, I see this person doing a really good job, I should actually stop and let them know because I want to build their confidence. I want them to see what I see in them, right? I feel like by ignoring that, you're not using your influence in a positive way.
Right.
And so that's what I like to think about too, is how we can make sure we're taking advantage of our ability to have an influence.
I think for me, and I'm only going to say this for me, is at my age now, I've worked for a lot of different leaders. Mm-hmm. The good thing about that is I saw some really great ones, mm-hmm. and I saw some really bad ones. Mm-hmm. And I learned what not to do, and I learned what to do. I picked up a piece of something from all of them, and I've made sure, because I was exposed to that whatever it was, I was going to then implement that with the people I lead.
Yeah.
So I've always believed in the adage that you praise in public and mm-hmm. you criticize in private.
Yep. I
have worked for bosses that didn't understand that. Boy, you can really submarine a team like that, mm-hmm. And call somebody out. That's hard to rebuild. You probably know that too. But it's taking what I have learned. If I was put into a leadership role at a very young age, I don't know if I would have been able to lead and felt confident saying, okay, do this. Well, do you think it's going to work? I don't know. I've never tried it before.
Yeah.
But if I would say that now and I'd say, yes, I've done this, I'm confident it'll work, I feel better. I mean, mm-hmm. I would do it. And that's probably the difference with me. But some people are born leaders, and some people, probably very few people, it comes natural. They can make the right decision all the time. And you learn from your mistakes.
Or they make it look like it comes easy to them, because I think that's the thing sometimes too, is it looks really easy from the outside, but behind the scenes it might be really challenging for them.
Well, that's like my golf game, because I can get there, I can drive the ball maybe 250, 260 yards, and I'm 100 yards from the hole, and you'd think, okay, simple math, he should be there, and it might take me 5 more strokes to get it hole out. So, but yes, you're correct. There's a lot of you will learn, and mm-hmm. a good leader learns and is always learning. Yeah. Making mistakes is not bad, but learning from the mistakes is so you don't do it again is really what a good leader will do.
Yeah. I also ask every single guest about what they're learning, so that was just the perfect segue you set me up for. So you are very experienced. You've been in the industry a long time, but what are you still learning? Yes, it's changing, so you're learning a lot. So the technology piece.
I am an absolute novice dummy at technology.
You are not. Don't talk about it.
Well, there's a reason for that, because when I was at WVU, mm-hmm. as part of my degree, I had to take a computer science course.
Okay.
And at that time, they made us take a language called Fortran.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't think so.
It was used by electrical engineers. I'm sitting here going, so this is back in the days when we had the key punch cards and huge printouts that never worked. And I just got a bad taste for technology. I said, it's not me.
Yeah.
And I've probably personally pushed back against it.
Only
for that reason. And I'm way behind.
Let it go, Kyle. It's time to let that go.
I'm a little bit old to learn. I give it to my kids and say, here, take my cell phone and put all the bells and whistles on it. Because, man, the kids these days are just wizards with technology.
Yeah, well, they've been around it the whole time.
They have been. That's exactly right. I went to college when the engineering students carried slide rules in their backpack.
Yeah, wow.
That's how old I am. So.
That's how old you are. Goodness. So, hold on. You're giving me like 2 answers at the same time. You're saying you're still learning technology, but I'm too old to learn
Well,
it.
That's true.
Yeah,
but sometimes you have to bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, so I'll wrap up the episode. I appreciate all of your time. I always do a branching out challenge. So I like to challenge my listeners to take something that we've talked about today and actually implement something in their life. So based on our conversation, we've gone all the way from your industry and talking about even being a good steward of people's own finances to specifically leading. What do you want to challenge people with? What could they implement? Do you have any advice that you'd like to share?
Make sure you find the right source for whatever you need to know.
I love it. How do you know when it's the right source, Kyle? That's the question.
Well,
we don't know who to believe anymore.
That's true. And I think you'll find out if you go to that source, but yet you don't get the result that you want. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, type of thing.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
Right.
That's fair. But I do think a lot of it also goes back to getting out from behind the computer and going and meeting a human and figuring out who you can trust in your community.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So.
And, it's like we were talking about this. I've talked to people that have bought homes online and they've never walked into them. And
it blows my mind.
It's not that I'm in the dating world because I'm happily married to a wonderful wife, but people that...
You didn't mention her before this. I'm just going to say she was an afterthought.
Yes, but people that go on these dating websites and see a picture of someone that they think they're going to meet and it turns out to be different.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. You may think that you're following somebody but you've never met them, and then you meet them, you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I really have that high of a stock price on them as I was before. So yeah,
it's a good point.
Putting a face to a name.
That's huge. And great advice, and it does connect back to the theme of the episode. So I appreciate you, Kyle, for everything that you do. Thank you for joining me on here. You earned an SLC beanie of your choice. You don't even have to wear the girly one.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, Mark does listen, by the way, to these episodes, so he will hear this. Okay. And Mark will be very upset with me if at some point I don't bring up something about wingdings.
Okay.
Is there something you'd like to share before we close?
Yes, it's out there, but coming from Moorefield, West Virginia, which Hester Industries, great family, great people. I really learned a lot from them. And yes, the poultry parade in July, when I was 1966, entered the contest. They would always have a bike decorating whatever contest, and then the male winner was Mr. Wingding, and the female winner was Mrs. Wingding, or Miss Wingding. And I think at that time, we got $5 as the prize, which was big-time money. And I still have Mr. Hester made my award out of a paper plate with really nice. And there's photographs of that. So it's funny, this is 1966, and I went to work for that company 20 years later.
That's so cool.
So yes. Mark is right, Mr. Wingding.
We have the one and only 1966.
Well, there were many others.
No, you were the 66.
Well, 66,
66, yes. Mr. Wingding.
Yes,
right here, guys. You didn't know he was a celebrity. I saved that till the end for the people who really listened to the whole thing.
I appreciate that. That would have ruined the whole thing if you had brought it out in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so intentional about that, about where I put things in the episode to keep them listening.
You definitely kept me on my toes.
Yeah. So when Matthew is picking the image to place behind our picture, our faces for the episode, he always chooses some random piece from the episode. And so people are usually like, wait, what is that? You had to have listened to the episode to understand why he chose that image. I wonder if he's going to choose a wingding. I will not let him use your picture. I promise. I will not give him your picture, but we do have a picture of him in the parade, and it's the cutest thing ever. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm going to spend hours just trying to figure out exactly what a wingding is to even find a picture.
What? Explain what a wingding is. People don't know.
Well, it was...
We're branching out here, guys.
The Hesters, Mr. Hester came up with that recipe in 1964, and it's basically your chicken wings, okay? So Hester Industries made most of their products were fully cooked poultry products sold to the food service industry, not retail at that time. And so these were battered first and second joint chicken wings. Back then, now we have these jumbo chicken wings that are coming off of a bird that's yielding about 8 to 10 wings per pound. Back when the birds were only about 2.5 pounds dressed out, they would yield somewhere between 12 to 14 joints.
This is a man that knows his chicken.
Well, it's been 20 some years since I sold it, but it was, and just a wonderful recipe. I think Mr. Hester said he went through 70 some variations of that recipe. Jeff, if you're out there listening, you can correct me, to come up with the wingding recipe, which was a trademark patented product. And back in the 60s when these rolled out, people weren't eating chicken wings like they are now. And they just rode that wave, and it was the best-selling product that Hester Industries put out.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Here I thought chickens only had 2 wings.
They do. Buffaloes don't have wings, but there's buffalo wings out there.
That is so funny. Well, thank you for sharing
You're
that
welcome.
little tidbit.
You're
I mean, we
welcome.
do call ourselves branching out for a reason. We do learn a lot of random facts. So thank you. Thank you for that. All right, guys, thank you for hanging out till the end of the episode. I hope you found value. If you did, please share it with folks in your network that you think would enjoy it as well. And as always, we release a new episode on Fridays at noon Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe so you get those notifications. It makes life a lot easier for you. We'd love to hear from you. We want your feedback on what you think of these episodes, or if there's something in particular you'd like us to discuss in terms of leadership, or maybe we need to branch out a little bit further. So we would love your feedback. Thank you so much. Be sure to visit branchingoutpodcast.com for more information about the podcast, or if you're interested in applying to be a guest. All right, thank you so much, and until next time, keep branching out.